back for an episode of Bad Ideas podcast with Brandon Ward. Brandon's an entrepreneur and a business broker, so on both ends of starting businesses and turning them into legacy. And he hosts the Order Within podcast. So super grateful to have such well-rounded business experience on the podcast to look at something a little crazy. Welcome, Brandon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Nick. I appreciate it, man. I love the idea of the show. I think it's brilliant. So appreciate you having me on, and I feel honored to be here to riff on some nonsense.
Yeah, well, nonsense incoming. So quick recap, we'll look at the bad idea in a second. We'll talk about why it's awful, and then we'll try to use our heads to make it something unique. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Pulling it up. So the bad idea is a Pet Psychic Hotline. Unlock the deepest thoughts of your furry friends. Man, do you have any pets? I don't know. Do you have a dog or cat or anything?
I do. We actually have two cats. One's napping right here, and one's actually napping right out in the room behind me here. So, it's kind of horrifying. I don't know to think about what my cats are actually. It's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, right. They're plotting to take over the world, or you in some respect.
Yeah.
Have you ever read that? There was that journal forever ago, like a dog's diary and a cat's diary, and the dog's is just like my favorite, my favorite, my favorite, my favorite, and then the cat's diary is like day 375 of trying to escape. Right.
That feels appropriate because when you think about the dynamics of dogs and cats, dogs are obviously very excited when they see you. Cats, you're not very certain all the time. They have indicators. You get little head boops every now and then, but most of the time, with their ears back, they're looking at you like, I hate this person, and I'm plotting to overthrow them.
Yeah, right. But I mean, maybe that's the key with cats, right? You develop a relationship by breaking through that wall somehow, and they show affection. It means that much more, right?
That's honestly what's fun about it. I was always a dog person growing up. My wife. To just what you said, you earn it, their love. It's a thing you have to learn. So if thinking about a pet psychic hotline, it does feel more valuable for cats because they seem to have a deeper empathetic sense. So I would imagine that would be more valuable for them versus dogs. But how in the world? How does the psychic just read their thoughts virtually?
Well, yeah, right. Because it's not talking to the cat, right? You put the cat on the phone, and then the psychic will tell you what they're thinking. I don't know how you market this, but I also don't know how it's practiced. I think that's what you're getting to. Like, how is it fulfilled?
Yeah.
Do you do like a Zoom and you're looking at the cat and the psychic's telling you?
I envision like a cat literally on the phone, like talking to a psychic. You just don't know what they're talking about. They're having these things. But it makes more sense to me that they would actually be like, if you're going to do it viably, the person, you would be with the psychic, the pet would be with you, and then they would be translating. Is that the idea?
I mean, I'm not sure. All we have is this one sentence, right? So we're assuming, but I mean, that kind of makes sense. Because it'd be hard to get someone to spend money to just like put a cat on the phone, right? I mean,
who knows
you have two cats. I'm probably the most insane dog person, at least on this podcast. But
nice.
I don't think I'd spend money what my dog thinks. I think 90% is like, when are you gonna feed me next? So like generally no. But like you said, if there was some sort of visual component to it where you could actually see the psychic interacting with your cat. Maybe that's a little more appealing or more believable. I mean, that's the hook here, right? It has to be believable for people to.
Because you'd have to validate in some way. Like, so if I go to a psychic hotline, there could be some sort of validity to what they're sharing by going into my history or whatever it may be. They can pull out information that I can say, oh wow, that's relevant, or oh wow, that's not. How do you do that with your pet? Like, it's completely trust driven, like you would. But if the psychic could say, I'm talking to your cat right now and this is what he's sharing with me, and you can see the cat interacting like in a way, like they're changing because that's the thing about cats that I think is different than dogs, is their eyes and their ears and the way they express can be very, I think, full sometimes if they're in it. So if you're noticing that though, like, so to your point, I think having the visual component where everyone's together, and if you can notice the change in the animal, then maybe there's some validity, but
it has to be somehow real. But yeah, I mean,
how do you validate this?
Yeah, right. It's a near impossible thing to get anyone to believe enough to want to buy. But I'm already like my mind is going to how to make it work, and I have ideas on how to promote it, which we'll talk about once we run out of why this is awful. So recap the list, right? Like you can't establish that it's real, right? Because the phone is not enough. You have to actually see the animal interacting with the person. You have to know to call. I mean, the level of skepticism on a human being able to communicate with an animal, like in person, is high. Virtually is extremely high. So that makes it like near impossible to do. How do you price it, right? Because like pets are generally inexpensive partners compared to the love and joy they provide back to you. Like, how do you price a psychic experiment? Are people paying hundreds of dollars for this, or 10? And like it's flawed all the way around, right?
It's very flawed. Well, also you would have to define why you would want to do this, and in my mind, usually when people are seeking solutions, there's a problem inherent. So if you're connecting it to, maybe we're kind of bridging into how you might actually market this properly. Because my thought is, well, what if they're having behavioral issues, or what if they've had like, so okay, here's a real example. We have 2 cats. We had a 3rd cat, but she was gone. We allow our cats to go out. We live in North Carolina, so we have a beautiful. It's beautiful here, but we lost one of our cats, sadly, and that's the first cat I've ever had, which is really heartbreaking. We miss her. They were brothers and sisters. So in this instance, like if I'm being honest, it would be interesting if I could talk to a psychic about her brother cat to see if he's doing okay, if he recognizes like that the cat is gone. So I would think if you're going to properly market this, you would have to identify reasons why you would be reaching out to a pet psychic, and I think there could be behavioral issues. Maybe you're seeing how their state is. So just trying to identify some call outs.
Yeah. I mean, the idea that popped into my head, I think my dogs are brilliant, but everyone, it's like you probably think your kids are brilliant too. It's just natural part of being parents. But my brilliant dog ate a couple rocks yesterday, and I'd actually really love to know why, right? Because it probably wasn't too appetizing or anything. And my fiance and I had a conversation, like, do we go to the emergency room? Like, how do we interact with this? And I actually probably would, if it wasn't unreasonably priced, consider dabbling in something like this just for the peace of mind. Because rationally, I'm like, well, he's a dog, and maybe it smells good, and I've had dogs that eat things that they shouldn't be eating before. But yeah, I mean, your point, like when there's a problem that this can solve. So it's almost like we're branching out of psychic. Maybe it is a pet psychic, but we're getting into like virtual pet healthcare, right? So someone's like diagnosing your animal's ailment over the phone or video or something. It's like telehealth for pets. It's not like psychics for pets, right?
I mean, look, so there was a guy in the early 20th century. He was called the Sleeping Prophet. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this guy. His name was Edgar Casey. And so he would go into a hypnosis state, and then literally in that hypnosis state, and this is real, Nick, like this is not something I'm making up. There's all this documentation. The guy, where he would, in this hypnosis state, would prescribe certain solutions, like home solutions that would help people who have been struggling with ailments that hasn't been helpful in the regular medical system. So this is kind of potentially like that if you find someone that has some sort of valid psychic skills. Now, we're going into the realm of what's possible or not, but I've looked into also a lot of like psychic spies in the government and these things, so there's some validity to this unseen world that could be applied to pets here, is my point. So I don't know, man, people will pay for a lot of weird stuff though, right? What would you, in that scenario you just gave, what would the top end be that you would be willing, like would you pay $150 for a psychic session to understand why your dog ate rocks?
Yeah, actually probably, because it's like it's that, or roll the dice on a health issue which could cost thousands of dollars. And at the end of even with a doctor, right, like the amount of times your doctor doesn't actually know what's going on, or is giving you a best guess is higher than we'd like to believe. It's their job to give you a very educated best guess, and they work really hard to make sure they can do that well. But at the end of the day, whether it's within the healthcare system or outside of it, we're just paying for peace of mind, right? Because we don't have any control over the situation. So that's what this really is as a service. Not telehealth for pets. It's paying for peace of mind that something I care about is going to be okay. People pay a lot for that, right?
I think so. I mean, when you think about all the high-level services too, so I mean, like, you have boarding schools and babysitting and dog walkers and all these services that support the well-being, really the physical and emotional well-being of their pets. This could absolutely fall in line with that type of service. I think the difference is you would have to be leaning into, more of the homeopathic spiritual communities. It's not going to be obviously the scientific. Normally, this isn't going to appeal to the more logically driven people, but it could also be a last-ditch effort, just like people do who've gone through the medical system, who say, I'm at my wit's end here. I don't know. Like, maybe this will help. Maybe there's something else that I don't know. Because what's interesting to me about this, Nick, is if the validity of the psychic was real, then they could potentially point out to you emotional things that maybe the way you're treating the animal or habits that you've applied or the food that you're giving them. Maybe they're like, dude, this food sucks. I hate it. Can we please change the food? Or I don't like going to this section of the park, or that dog down the road is a pain in my butt. Can we stop having play dates? Like, I don't know. That might be valid information if you really love your pet.
Yeah. I'm, thinking about this and jumping back to the first part about why it's an awful idea, I almost wonder if just the name itself is what's killing it. And this is totally against like everything that I believe in business-wise, but I always preach that the name really doesn't make that much of a difference. But in this case, like if the value is just you feeling better and getting peace of mind about your pet, then calling it psychic, something that's going to be really hard, if not impossible, to prove to the rational crowd, is the biggest reason why it's an awful idea. Because when you think about it, if you remove the psychic part of it, and you heard from a friend that they called this guy and he gave them a bunch of tips on how to deal with their dog or cat, and it totally changed their relationship, you wouldn't care how. If they were psychic or not, you wouldn't really care. You'd be like, oh, well, give me his number, I'll call him, figure out what's going on with my dog.
Exactly.
So I almost wonder if the name's getting in the way. What do you think?
I think so. Well, because that's what hung me up initially. Like, when we were talking about it, was trying to envision, like, what the hell is even a pet psychic? Like, because the first thing that came to mind was just the pet and the psychic having this dialogue that no one hears. And you're just, and then at the end they're like, hey, so okay, this is what the deal is, and you're like, I guess I don't know. But what you just said is very. If someone could provide some sort of context or insight that you haven't been able to glean from everything else that you've done with your pet, like the modern health industry, and you really love your animal, would you be willing to spend $150 to find a possible answer? I think most pet owners would, realistically.
Yeah.
Like, and $150 is a $45 session or 45-minute session in, like, a therapy session or something like that. So it's not outside the realm of possible service price points.
Yeah,
so,
and if you got nowhere else to go, your dog's in pain and the vet says they can't do anything, maybe this is what you do for yourself. It's like an expensive massage, right? That makes you feel better. It just has like immediate feedback loop that this doesn't. But
that's the one gap, right? Is the feedback loop on the difference. It's a huge leap of faith you would have to take.
Yeah. Well, I want to bridge this a little bit. We were talking about this before the podcast about your business and the companies you deal with at like a local level, and just for the audience, like you help small businesses transact, kind of at the end of their career, find creative ways for the owners to exit the business. And we were talking about how a lot of the businesses you deal with, like, they don't do a lot of external marketing. So most of the value is in the network they build of customers over time, long periods of time. Satisfaction on the work side, good references. They can build 7-figure businesses that just last and perpetuate because customers know what to expect and continue to trust them. Kind of overlaying these two, like if it's a service business, and in your experience, like, have you seen a lot of businesses that deliver some kind of like satisfaction or value that isn't super concrete or objective? that get to that level and last, for that period of time. And I'm thinking things in like the beauty category, not necessarily the spiritual health category, but I'd imagine there's probably a lot of businesses that don't like immediately solve your problem, but do make your life better in one way or another.
Yeah.
That have significant long-term customer bases. Anything like that you ever bump into?
Well, and that's an interesting point, Nick, because a lot of businesses like that tend to be driven purely by word of mouth.
Yeah.
And they do exist. And I think that in and of itself validates those types of services. If someone goes and they can't point objectively to why it helped them, but they feel better or they enjoyed it or whatever it may be, especially like beauty services or things like that, you can the fact that the business is built around word of mouth is validation for how much strength is in the service, even if it's a perceived value, right?
Yeah.
So because the reputation stands outside of whatever the logic may be to whatever we're speaking at, right? I mean, a lot, and in fairness, a lot of the business owners that I work with are service providers, they're construction companies, welders, cabinet makers, things like that. So there is some tangibility to what they do.
Yeah.
But to your point, though, a lot of these businesses think that because they're not marketing, that makes them less valuable. And what you and I know about growth is if you've been able to build a business without doing any marketing and you've lasted 10, 20 plus years and you're profiting, you have a great business. It doesn't exist like that unless you're doing great work. So when you add on modern marketing practices like digital marketing like you do, it actually has an incredible opportunity to 2, 3, 4 times that business because of that. So it's interesting how old school kind of business owners miss that concept because they've done it differently their whole life.
Yeah. Well, this is me getting super nerdy, but if we kind of compare the two, like we have these old school construction businesses, just construction as its own category. The differentiation between the companies is very, very slim, right? Like I'm sure some businesses have, price variance, but other than price, you're doing the same work, you're delivering the same product, you're following the same plans. So at the end of the day, like the real value of like choosing one vendor over the other is the reputation. It has nothing to do with the end product. So that adds a little weight to what we were saying about like the Pet Psychic. Like even if you can't prove what they're doing, if a bunch of people say it's great or it helped them or made them feel better, and they're able to build that customer base and network, it could be something viable. Yeah, I mean that's what just came to mind when I was thinking about your businesses. A lot of companies that are competing in like a very difficult way without doing any marketing. So they're growing almost the same way someone starting a Pet Psychic business would have to grow.
Yeah, right. Because it's purely going to be driven by word of mouth. I mean, because you being a digital marketer, how would you go about doing keyword research for a Pet Psychic?
Well, so it's actually easy to get people to click on stuff related to their pets. We actually we worked on a business that I'm not going to name, but we used pets it was a almost legal services company, and we used pets very heavily to promote it, and they outperformed everything else.
Wow.
And it had nothing to do with pets either. It was just wild.
So just using pets alone, even though that had nothing to do with the service.
Because people care. They see the pet and they think about theirs, and they automatically want to know what it is, if there's some kind of emotional pull there. But on the
That's super true. I was at this session last night, Nick, and a business owner brought his dog with him. And he called him his business partner, and he literally said, "I treat my dog better than I treat most people because I don't know, dogs give you unconditional love. Your pets typically give you unconditional love." So it is kind of an emotional hack in a way, like what y'all were doing, because it's like, exactly.
If we build on that a little bit, knowing you're jogging my mind on the digital side, knowing how well pets are as a draw for companies like this, it'd be very easy to get a lot of people to put eyes on the service. And here's this is a bad idea on top of a bad idea. Maybe it makes a good idea. There's mega money in referring pet owners to pet products. So imagine you it was a Pet Psychic business, but you actually used the craziness of the name to get people to, hey, this looks crazy. What is this? Let me check it out. But what if the sessions are free and all the money is referral based?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's actually, that's kind of mind boggling because it basically the psychic service becomes your lead magnet. and then you basically are on consultation calls. You know what? I spoke with your pet. He's having these issues. Prescribe you this topical ointment, this herbal tincture, and this pet food. Here's the link to go get it. Thank you. See you next week or whatever it is. Like, that's kind of great. That actually could work.
Yeah, that actually could be a real idea. Because I mean, who's not going to call a pet psychic for free? You know, who really loves their pet or is curious? That's super easy to market, right?
You would actually not. You would have to be mindful of marketing because you would be overwhelmed with so many people saying yes to a free psychic consultation for your pet.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine you're scrolling through LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever, and an ad popped up. I would do that.
Yeah.
Like, I really would.
No, I think I would too. Taking this a step further, have you ever seen the AI virtual humans, like the virtual video humans? I forget, begins with an S in one of the companies. Is it like a remodel of people that actually exist and they kind of remodel them, or just completely automated virtual people? There's a company, I'm mind blanking on that name, but it's totally virtual, and you basically like input a script, and the person delivers that script directly back to you. You could, in theory, build bots that could deliver all of these calls with just a series of AI prompts. Because I'm sure, like, algorithmically, there's a fairly limited number of questions you're going to get asked depending on the type of the pet. So, you know, what's your pet's name? What kind of breed is your pet? Like, you narrow them down into a certain series of prompts, and then this AI, you know, either audio or video, is actually delivering the answer to you. So you have a scalable solution to deliver pets. Here we go. Now we've got a business. We have no overhead costs with technology, and we're referring people out to products. Like, your dog is not eating because he really wants a new Frisbee. Right?
Go buy the Frisbee. That's really what he wants.
Yeah.
This is the... You know when you have a decent business idea when you start stretching into the ethical side of it, though. Because now it's like, is this ethical to do? Because realistically, you could do something like this, position it as psychic therapy, have AI run the whole consultation, and then just start feeding in whatever products you wanted to, which is kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, well, as long as it's relevant. Yeah, I think you're right on the ethics side. As long as it's relevant and you're not like hosing people, you are making them feel a little better for their time. I think you can do a whole lot with it.
Exactly.
This is making me think of, we talked to a company 2 months ago you know Cameo? Have you ever seen the Cameo app?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. So they made an AI that they can train on the voice of celebrities, and it mimics perfectly. And they wrote a bot that will basically have conversations as the celebrities, but they have to sign up to authorize it. So like, you sign up, you train it on your voice, and then you get fees every time someone like signs up to chat with you through your AI. But it's perfect one-to-one. You're thinking about, if bots can do that, you can make a psychic that is basically virtual and is the ultimate referral magnet for the pet supply space.
I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty genius though. Like, I've seen those, and that technology is getting really solid with replication of whatever you're feeding it and training the AI, and then they're communicating it. So you could, because to your point earlier, realistically, how many types of questions are you going to be fielding with this? I mean,
it's fairly limited, right? So a bot could cover the whole. It's wild. It's wild.
Yeah.
So
super interesting.
Where do you think we are on the bad idea of pet psychic? I think, as itself, as a service, professing to actually be psychic, we both agree is pretty horrible, right?
Yeah, that's a tough sell, especially if you're actually trying to sell those services, because there's just, how do you validate anything that's being shared? Like, it's the reason humans go to psychics is you have some potential of validating that information. It's just impossible to do that with a pet. So on the surface, it's a terrible idea.
Awful idea. But we think if we sell it and market it as a novelty and give it away for free and make money through referrals, maybe it's something unique, something with some draw that could have legs.
that's really a mind-boggling genius idea, because I can see it in action, and that's what's and when you couple that with the pet industry, which is huge, is it really that crazy to skin out a few $1 million annually in the massive pet industry to do something like this, especially that's basically purely driven by affiliate sales and AI technology?
Yeah, no, it could be huge. I mean, you could exit to BarkBox and then only promote their products. That's probably the path,
Look at that.
right?
That's it. They're probably already working on an AI Pet Psychic. Now that they're going to send them this and then get your royalties from it.
Yeah, our royalties. We'll split it. We came up with this together. Look,
I like it.
Look, man, super grateful for you coming on. This has been wild. That was a tough one. I didn't know where we were going to go when I saw it, but we turned it into something unique. So I appreciate the brainstorm.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate you having me on. I did not think we were actually going to bridge to a viable idea, though. I really didn't. I was struggling to see where we were going to get some viability out of it, but that was fun, Nick. I really appreciate you having me on, man, and happy to come on again in the future. I love this concept. I love this idea. And goes to show, man, with a little creativity and openness, you can turn just about any bad idea into something good if you really want to.
Yeah, that's the hope. I appreciate you coming on. We'll have you back soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick.